You know when you speak just a tiny bit too much and you feel you've exerted like a lot of energy, it can get you thinking, dude, is there a cost to speaking too much? Is there an energetic cost or a spiritual cost to speaking a lot? Basically, man, it boils down to this. It boils down to where you are speaking from. You can genuinely develop the ability to channel the universe. And when you do that, you're speaking from the most authentic place that you have. That's your true self, okay? We want to do as much channeling as we possibly can. Now, there's various levels to this. I can do it a little bit, but I'm not like Bashar level where you can, channel someone. But I want you to notice that when you are channeling, even just a little bit, or you're present, or you feel like you're speaking from your higher self, that's really what it is. If you're doing that, notice you don't really lose energy. Because that part of you is infinite. And weirdly enough, sometimes it might actually energize you. So you might get energy from it. So you might have been listening to this thinking okay, speaking is definitely going to have an energetic cost, right? But actually, I want you to take the perspective just for a second that speaking can create an energetic benefit, meaning you kind of raise your state a bit. You become more fluid. You're a little bit more warmed up and you feel more presence. So again, as you've noticed, that there's a theme on this channel, which is we start talking about a thing that's like a normal life thing, like exercising or speaking or socializing. And we're seeing it now from this new non-dual perspective. We're seeing it through the lens of a higher consciousness viewpoint. And when we apply this here, speaking, it doesn't need to be something that you are averse to. Yeah, I used to be really protective of my my energy, especially when speaking. Sometimes I even do this sometimes, man, where if I'm unwell or I'm having a really quiet day, I will not speak to anyone. And that's not a personal thing, man. I'm just very respectful of my being is sort of recharging. I'm sort of in hibernation mode. And I for me personally, man, speaking can be quite costly energetically. But if I'm coming from my ego. But if you come from higher self or spirit, you don't lose energy. So I've noticed in my own path that the more I develop, the less averse I am to speaking, because when I do speak, so long as I'm sufficiently warmed up, I'm not losing energy like I used to be. Instead, the way I frame it these days, man, is I'm giving. You're giving energy, man. And people love energy. People love to receive energy. And what's interesting is even if the person isn't wildly open to the energy, they'll secretly, subtly appreciate it. Because if you were in their shoes and you were pretty low energy, it can kind of perk you up. And you can use it as a platform to just start being more energized. So be open to that. Now, what about the negative cost? Because we know that there can be a big energetic cost to speaking. So this comes about when basically we don't respect our boundaries enough and we speak it just a little bit too much. Have you ever talked for a little bit too long and you feel you've sort of overshared? Not even in the content, but just energetically. Kind of makes us feel a bit gross. Kind of makes us feel like we need to go back and heal, right? So I will say, you want to be careful with this because you don't want to be judging yourself for expressing yourself. Yeah, I used to fall into this trap all the time where I would have in my mind this idea that the person who speaks the least is the most powerful, or the silent Sigma male. You know what I mean? So I used to kind of take those perspectives, and there's some truth in the first one, maybe not the second one, brother. So what I used to see myself is if I were to share a lot, if I was the one who was predominantly speaking and I was giving lots of my energy and I was just totally expressing myself without any filter, man, just full on, I would then have a lot of ego backlash. I'd be oh man, I spoke so much. Oh my God, I feel so gross. Honestly, man, do you know what that is? It's self-judgment. Notice if you fall into this, how much self-judgment you still have. Yeah. Talking is a really interesting thing because it triggers this sort of maybe insecurity or self-consciousness that we have because we're sharing. Yeah, and sharing is a risk. When you share, it's a genuine threat to your ego because you're showing yourself. You're saying, this is who I am. And you're making yourself more vulnerable. Now, as you know, vulnerability is not bad. Vulnerability is actually good. But can you hold that vulnerability? Can you allow yourself to be pretty vulnerable as you speak? For example, man, not too long ago, I was at an event. It's like a personal development workshop. And when I was at the front, I did this exercise because I'm working on being more vulnerable with people, especially at in a social setting. So lots of people witnessing. And I sat there and I looked at everyone and I basically just declared, oh yeah, I am vulnerable and I make that okay. And for me personally, man, that's what I needed to do to heal this, to basically take up that space and that be okay. Yeah. So I encourage you to practice it, man. Practice being more vulnerable as you speak and making it okay. Because ultimately, man, only you can judge yourself and only you can make it okay. So make it okay, man, and you'll be set free. Final thing I'll say is I hope you've got an insight from this. Yeah. Because as I said, man, speaking is like an unavoidable part of life. And judging yourself, that actually can be healed and worked on. And what can also be healed and worked on is how much you share and where you share from. Really, man, you want to be able to share anything. But where you share from, ideally, will be the most authentic place that can possibly be. You want it to be your higher self, your true self. So introspect and feel into whether or not you are speaking from a place that feels basically true and infinite. It will feel infinite because you can kind of just speak forever. It feels very spiritual as well. It will feel like nice to share. It feels quite energetically positive. And if you're not able to speak from that place, don't worry, man. Instead, if you're speaking from ego, and that's where you're at, contemplate and feel into how taxing it is. You might feel kind of exhausted from speaking from this place, which is ultimately your ego, because ultimately on the existential level, it's inauthentic. It's not really you. It's an illusion. And so it requires energy. It's effort. My advice, man, get bored of that. Start speaking from your true self. That's the way, man. All right, my friend, lots of love. Take care. And as always, my friend, peace.